Very warm greetings to you, dear viewers. You are watching OBN Horn of Africa. This is weekly program Future Africa, and I'm Fanta Umbelete hosting the program. Today, I have a very special guest who joins me from CR Washington, USA, Nagesa Dube, lawyer. Nagesa, very warm welcome to the program, and thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Would you introduce yourself to our viewers, please? Who is Nagesa Dube?
Nagesa Dube is an Ethiopian. I studied law in Addis Ababa University between 2001 to 2009. I was a former political prisoner while I was a student. I was detained for 3 years, and after I moved to United States in 2013, I have been active in Ethiopian politics. I've been organizing the diaspora and putting pressure on the Ethiopian government. After the reform process in 2018, after the new prime minister took office, I was back to Ethiopia in 2020, and I was appointed as a deputy attorney general, briefly for like 6 months. And then back to United States. I did my LLM and currently practicing law in Seattle, Washington.
Throughout modern Ethiopian history, various regimes have implemented different modes of governance. What were the challenges associated with these systems, and did they genuinely serve the interest of all Ethiopians?
Thank you. Ethiopia's modern history has indeed seen various modes of governance. One is imperial rule, the other one is communist era. When I talk about modern history from King Menelik to now. So there is imperial rule during Menelik and Haile Selassie, there is communist rule during Derg, and now there is a federal federal experiment. So each facing distinct challenges, and so what are the challenges? During imperial era, the monarchs centralized power, which led to marginalization of ethnic groups. There is cultural suppression. There is a limited representation for diverse communities, and there is even marginalization along religious lines. Some religions, such as Muslim, have been marginalized and kind of not recognized. So the system served the ruling elites. By then it's called the Masafans, okay, or Abalafas. Not the peasants, and which results in disparities and grievances among different ethnicities. Coming to the communist era, during the Marxist-Leninist Derg, the system is centralized. It was a unitary system. Actually, even the imperial era is a unitary, because it's centralized, and the Derg is also a unitary system, which is centralized. In addition, its authoritarian governance exacerbated internal conflicts, human rights abuses, regimes' attempts to homogenizing society. Both until 1991, the government policy in Ethiopia is to homogenize, to make everybody similar, same culture, one language. This is a policy to bring the society into Amharic speaking and that culture. So that led to suppression of cultural identities. So it resulted in widespread opposition. And there is also the economic system was also not good. It's mismanaged. So coming to the third one, from after 1991, the EPRDF revolution, which led to transitional government and which led to 1995 FDRE constitution, here comes the adoption of federal system, which is aimed to address ethnic diversity by granting regional autonomy. While it is aimed to accommodate diverse ethnic groups, the challenge persists regarding equitable resource distribution, democratization, tensions over regional autonomy, and the question about balance between regional states, and central power. Still, the challenge is here, balancing the power of regional states and federal government is still a problem. So throughout these governance systems, challenges have included representation, equitable resource allocation, ethnic tensions, ensuring inclusivity. Each regime faced criticism for favoring certain groups over the other, or certain regions, and neglecting broader interests of a nation. So while the move toward this federalism was intended to address the challenges such as inclusivity, the challenges such as ethnic equality, but still there is a problem between regional autonomy and national unity. We see that in general.
The lack of inclusive and diverse governance system in Ethiopia is believed to exacerbate political divisions among its diverse nations and nationalities. Do you believe the present political instability is a result of these unresolved grievances?
Yes, indeed. The lack of an inclusive and a diverse governance system in Ethiopia has contributed to exacerbating political divisions among nations and nationalities. And these unresolved grievances are a significant factor contributing to the present political instability in the country. Ethiopia's historical and unresolved grievances, including ethnic tensions, unequal resource distribution, and questions surrounding representation and autonomy, have led to ongoing political divisions. You see, there were a lot of rebel groups, rebel activities going on, maybe previous to 1991, and even after that. Actually, still it's going on, but there are a lot of political tension, polarization, which are failure to adequately address these deep-rooted issues. And these issues resulted in, number one, inter-ethnic conflict, ethnic tensions and disputes over resources and political representation there is these things in various regions, which is contributing to instability and displacements. And this tension has become challenge to national unity. The lack of an inclusive governance system that accommodates the diverse needs of different ethnic groups has become a challenge for countries' unity and cohesion. I see the attempts after 2018. There are attempts to include that with formation of Prosperity Party, like including all the regions into parties, or all the ethnic groups into the party, so that they can play their role at the center. However, still there is a lot to do. There is inequality and marginalization, persisting disparity with regard to resource allocation and development among the regions, which fostered feelings of marginalization among certain ethnic groups. And it is fueling grievance and further divisions. There is also political fragmentation. along ethnic lines, which has complicated governance, leading to challenges in forming a unified and inclusive national agenda. So we have unresolved grievances and absence of robust inclusive governance system. So Ethiopia's ethnic groups have significantly contributed to the current political instability. So addressing these issues through inclusive dialogue, probably, or having equitable policies, genuine commitment to accommodating diversity will be crucial in fostering stability, unity, and shared vision for the country's future.
To resolve historical and political disputes, Ethiopia adopted federalism 3 decades ago. How would you assess its implementation? Has it effectively addressed issues of equality and fair resource distribution among the diverse nations and nationalities?
It has attempted to address those issues such as ethnic diversity, power sharing, inclusivity, and representation. It has attempted and somehow addressed. But it's still a lot to do. As I told you, there is this problem of balancing regional autonomy and central federal power. So there is a need of creating cohesion. There is a need of creating national feeling at the same time. Like, you respect the diversity, you create the autonomy at the regional level. You create equality among the ethnic groups and religious group and whatever group. And then at the same time, you have to ensure feeling of unity and patriotism at the same time. So, but we are lacking we're losing balance. There is a lot to work on the balance between the two.
Well done. Why opt for federalism in Ethiopia over other political systems?
Federalism in Ethiopia was chosen as a governing system primarily because it addresses the country's diverse ethnic, linguistic, and cultural composition. When we talk about ethnic diversity, Ethiopia is a home to various ethnic groups. Ethnic groups with distinct language, with a distinct culture, history. So federalism is seen as a way to recognize and accommodate these differences, this diversity, by granting regional autonomy to these diverse groups. Coming to power sharing, federalism allows for power sharing among these diverse ethnic, linguistic groups, and by forming regional states. It aims to decentralize power. There is power accumulation at the center, so it decentralizes this power and shares power to local. I mean, local affairs would be dealt by local, or regional affairs will be dealt by regional governments. So in that way, it can address, or it can overcome marginalization of certain regions and ethnic groups. The other issue is about conflict resolution. Ethiopia's history is marked by ethnic tensions and conflicts. So federalism we opt for federalism, seeing it as a mechanism for inclusive governance, promoting dialogue, and engaging in this diverse group in a decision-making process. So the system is aimed to ensure various communities so that they can solve their matter directly. So That way, it will help in conflict resolution. There is also inclusivity and representation. It allows representation of different groups. In that way, it promotes inclusivity. With another issue is resource allocation. Through federalism, regions have control over their resources, resource allocations. Okay, the Afar region will know how to allocate their resources, depending on the region. The region is, for example, like a desert or semi-desert. So for desert, they will coin their own policy, how to use their resource for that. Like the policy that works for highland areas doesn't work for lowland area, Afar area, or Somali areas, or for Gambela. They will have a different policy, and they have their own mechanism of allocating their resources in their region. So it allows for resource allocation. So regions will have their own way of allocating their resource, and so it is intended to address all this. And finally, there is a constitutional recognition for these diverse groups. So the federalism is enshrined in Ethiopia's constitution, providing legal framework for these diverse ethno-linguistic groups. So the legal framework for decentralization, autonomy, and self-determination of regions within federal structure. So that is why we opt for federalism. If we opt for unitary system, it means power is accumulated at the center. The central government will coin a policy, development policy, political policy. Every policy will be coined at the center, and it will be implemented over regions, or provinces. But right now, all the regions will coin their own policies depending on the realities of their region. Not the federal, policies will not be made at the center and implemented in the regions. So that is why we opt for federalism. So while federalism has been seen as a solution to accommodate diversity and promote local governance, there are also some challenges, as I mentioned earlier, interregional tensions, boundary disputes, and questions about balance of power between the regions and the federal government. But with all its problems, the federal structure, federal system is chosen, is much better than the unitary system for Ethiopia.
Dear our audience, you are watching OBN Horn of Africa Future Africa program. Stay connected. Approximately 28 countries, representing over 40% of the global population, currently embrace federalism as a governing system. However, certain political groups in Ethiopia depict the federal system as divisive and contrary to fostering strong national unity. What are your thoughts on this perspective?
Yeah, currently about 27 or 28. The figure I have is 27 countries adopt federalism. We have about 193 states worldwide. I remember that's 193, could be 4 or 5. It depends. Like some new countries can be created over time. But when South Sudan got its independence, by then it was 193 states. Out of those, 27 or 28 states adopted a federal system. In reality, in Ethiopia reality, it is not the federalism that is causing tension among regional states or among the ethnic groups. It is the unitary system or the previous governance system, the grievance accumulated over the last so many years is causing tension. Why I say this is some communities still, so I told you earlier that there is assimilation policy followed by past regimes, the imperial regimes from 1901 or 1900 all the way to 1974. 74 years attempted to assimilate Ethiopian ethnic group into one linguistic and cultural system. Okay, they attempted to assimilate the whole, to unify the country under one culture and language. There are people with that view which still want us to that policy to continue, which still do not recognize other language. I can tell you the current recent petition to U.S. State Department when American Embassy make advertisement of its service in Afan Oromo. There are people petitioning, intellectuals, people who live in the Western countries, petitions to American State Department saying that why you advertise in other languages except Amharic or whatever. There is still commitment to assimilation policy coined from in the imperial system and also communist system until 1991. So that is 91 years. Both the imperial regime and the communist Derg regime, Marxist-Leninist regime, from 1900 to 1991, for about 100 years, there is this system of policy of assimilation. The country followed that. So a lot of people still have that mentality, still wanted that assimilation policy to continue. They think that the country can be unified if and only if everybody speak one language, Amharic, everybody follow that culture. Otherwise, for them, now I speak Oromo, some other people speak Tigrinya, some other people speak their own language, local language, means country is already, there is no unity and there is no country. Ethiopia is already divided, Ethiopia is already destroyed, Ethiopia doesn't exist for them because unless otherwise everybody speak Amharic and unified under that culture and language, for them country does not exist. It's already dispersed. It doesn't exist anymore. There is people with this view, you know, and people with this view, when other nations and nationalities in the country try to assert their own identity, their language, their culture, right away they resist. So that is what is creating a problem. It is the past policy of assimilation, and that mindset is creating problem here. I don't mean that the current federal structure doesn't have a problem. That also, if you assert your distinct identity against the national unity, if you extend it extreme, if you take it extreme, if you don't recognize your other brothers from other ethnic groups, from other language, this will cause a conflict. So in general, we have to bring some moderate way of solving this problem.
Somewhere along the way, more has replaced me.
It's not the ethno-linguistic federalism that is, or multinational federalism that is causing the problem. It is either people who are against it, opting for unitary system or opting for assimilationist policy, or people who extend this right to the extent of going against other ethnic group or dominating other ethnic group, or just totally denying recognition of other ethnic group. While you assert your identity, language, and culture, you have to recognize others as well. You should not regard yourself as people from different country you should also recognize the unity of the country. At the same time, practice your own culture and religion or whatever values within the unity of the country. So it is people who take things extreme, either extremely unitary or extremely very like secessionist or some extreme kind of ethno-nationalism that is causing problem. It's not the very principle, it's not the very federal structure or federal implementation of the adoption of the federal system that is causing problem.
Thank you very much. How can the federal system be optimized as an effective system for Ethiopia? What changes or improvements would you suggest?
Okay. So to just add up on a little bit, for Ethiopia's present political instability, which is undoubtedly influenced by unresolved grievances stemming from historical, political, ethnic, and socio-economic divisions, we have ethnic fragmentation. The country's diverse ethnic makeup has historically faced challenges in equitable representation, in unequitable resource distribution, and there were lack of recognition of cultural identities. And these disparities have fueled tensions and grievances among various ethnic groups. So there is also inherent challenges of federalism. It's always when you adopt a certain system, it might be better than other systems. It doesn't mean it is absolutely absolute or without defect. Anything, any governance system, for example, take democracy. Democracy has a lot of defects. However, we don't have any system other better than democracy so far. So any system, even federalism, though it is better than other system, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have defects. So the implementation of federalism aimed to address ethnic diversity, it is faced by challenges, balancing between regional autonomy and national unity. There is a conflict over political power. So different groups, different political groups, factions, ethnic groups has intensified, leading to power struggle and dispute over governance. This contributed to current political fragility. There are economic disparities. Regions do not have equal resource allocation by nature, even by nature. Some areas are endowed with a lot of resources. Some are fertile, some are dry, a lot of disparities, even by nature. So there is, we need kind of inclusive economic development. So these are the challenges. So these are resolved issues which contributed to the current political instability. So the ongoing conflicts in regions such as Tigray, Oromia, and other areas, there is this political conflict over political power, there is a federalism challenge, there is economic disparity, there is ethnic fragmentation, historical issues, okay? So there is deep-rooted nature of these grievances. Addressing this historical and contemporary challenge needs equitable and sustainable manner crucial to achieving lasting peace. So for this, I recommend inclusive national dialogue, some kind of peace, truth and reconciliation efforts, and some kind of amendments and some arrangement that includes the population in general. You need to engage the population. So through inclusive national dialogue and some kind of truth and reconciliation process.
scholars often describe federalism as the art of balancing. What does this mean?
This usually means states has to balance the regional autonomy and the federal power. So, how to balance? As I told you, if you take the unitary system, it is only in the unitary system there is no federal government and the state government. In federal system, you have double layer that type layer of government. You have a government at federal level, you have government at state level. So it's a layer, double layer. At unitary system, the government is only one, central government. The local ones, they only implement the policies which are made at the center. So the center have legislative, the central government have executive, the central government has judiciary. So that goes all the way to provinces and to local government in unitary system. In federal system, there are double legislative. There is legislative at the center, at the federal level. There are legislative at the state level. There are executive at the federal level. There is executive at the state level. There is judiciary at the federal level. There is judiciary at the, it's a double layer. So there is a need to balance the power at the federal level, at the federal government level, and the power at the state level, the state and the federal. So who distributes this power? It is the constitution that distributes power to the federal government and to the state. So the constitution gives power, some power, distributes some power to the states, to the regional state, some power to the federal government. So you see, you need to balance this power granted to the states and the power granted to the federal government. There is a autonomy of the states, and also you need unity of the nation, and autonomy given to the regional state. This thing needs to be balanced. If the region extends its autonomy beyond some level, it affects the unity of the country. If the federal government tries to centralize the power, it will affect the autonomy of the regions. So this needs to be balanced. That is why we say it's a balance of that's why we talk about the balance.
How many countries worldwide currently adopt federalism as governing system?
So far, as far as I know, it's 27 states. 27 states adopt federalism as a system of government. United States being maybe standing the first state. By the way, federalism is a recent system of governance. It's not old system of government. Maybe unitary system is older. A federal is relatively new. Maybe United States became adopted federalism long ago. If you remember, after there was a controversy in the United States, some countries opted for confederation, the southern states, during time of Abraham Lincoln, during President Abraham Lincoln in 1860s or 1850s. During that time, in 1860s, I think, yeah. The southern states didn't want the federal system, didn't want the power at the center. They fought for a confederation. They were called Confederate States. And actually, the northern state under Abraham Lincoln won the war, and they kept the unity and the federal system. So so far it's 27 countries, and many new countries are getting into federal system. Even in our neighbors, new countries adopting federal system of government. Even Somalia, I think, adopted a federal. Ethiopia used to be unitary. It adopted federal system after 1991. You see, Sudan used to be a unitary. We don't know which way it goes. Kenya used to be a unitary. So the number of countries which adopt a federal system is increasing from time to time, but so far it's 27.
Ethiopia is gearing up for a national dialogue and transitional justice process aimed at addressing long-standing historical injustices and the grievances among its people. Will the discussion also encompass deliberations on the choice of governance structure for the country's political system?
Probably, yeah. It depends. It depends. I think there would be discussion about what kind of political system, because there are views, there are groups of people which oppose to the current federal structure. Actually, these groups, they do not, in general, people do agree with the decentralization of power, which means they do accept federal arrangement, but they don't agree on what kind of federal arrangement. Is it ethno-linguistic or geographic? There are people who opt for geographic federalism, which means the system of federalism should not be based on ethnic identity or linguistic one. So there might be, this issue might be one of the issues, and that would people would discuss on the national dialogue. For me, I think so, but that doesn't mean that because their discussion will be held, doesn't mean that this system would change. It means like people would understand each other, people would know what majority people think, how even those who oppose to this kind of federalism would understand if majority of people is for it or against it. So I think that is one of the agenda under which dialogue would take place, because in a national dialogue, one of the things is to discuss on constitutional reform. So governments may initiate, or groups may initiate dialogue to review or reform their kind of governance system to ensure inclusivity, legitimacy in the constitutional process. So I hope this issue would be raised in that discussion.
Thank you very much. From your experience, what circumstances typically prompt a country to convene a national dialogue?
Countries often convene national dialogue in response to various circumstances, such as political crisis, social unrest, post-conflict situation, constitutional reform, economic challenges, or ethnic or cultural diversity. Countries with diverse ethnic or cultural landscape may convene dialogue to address issues related to inclusion, issues related to representation, or cultural rights, linguistic rights, to foster equality or harmony. Countries do convene national dialogue for economic challenge, severe economic crisis, or disparity could prompt dialogue to discuss economic reforms, resource allocations. The other issue is constitutional reform. In case of, if there are doubts, if there are like oppositions, or if some group, or if there is opposition against the very constitutional system, constitution, there can be dialogue as a result of this. If we take Kenya, in 2007, 2008, Kenya convened a national dialogue after 2006 election, I think. There was an election dispute on which many people were killed. That election was the challenge. It's between Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. They had a close, very close vote. There was people, supporters of Odinga, uprised, protested the election result. A lot of, and there was also ethnic conflict due to that. As a result of that, Kenya convened the national dialogue, which resulted in amendment, not only amendment, change of constitution. They come up with a new constitution. For the transition period, they had the 2 years government of national unity. Kenya is not a parliamentary system, it's a presidential system. In presidential system, you have a president who is the head of government and who is head of state. You don't have prime minister. But in the transition, in the government of national unity, they made another new position as a prime minister. They made Odinga prime minister, Uhuru president for 2 years. Then a new constitution, they come up with a new people voted on the constitution, and the constitution, yes, no vote, referendum, the constitution passed. So some countries sometimes, if they want to make dialogue, national dialogue on very important issues, one issue is the constitution. So there is a post-conflict situation. For example, the Kenya one is actually post-conflict as a result of election dispute. People also, countries also convene the national dialogue for situations such as post-conflict. Ethiopia's case is also post-conflict. There are a lot of conflict taking place in Ethiopia. So probably if now some of the rebel group come to concession, come to agreement with the government, like the TPLF has reached an agreement with the government. They go through the disarming, demobilization, and the reintegration process. That issue, that conflict is resolved. If other rebels also come to that post-conflict, national dialogue take place in post-conflict situation. In countries emerging from conflict or civil war, national dialogue serve as mechanism to foster and prevent future conflict. That is one of these. Or social unrest. If there is a widespread unrest, if there is a widespread protest, take that country, not Egypt. During Arab Spring, the first country, Tunisia. There is a guy who set up fire on himself and commit suicide, if you remember. That provoked unrest in the country, widespread protests, and I think the president was Bouazizi or somebody. He resigned, and Tunisia went through what? National dialogue. The civil society organizations, they come up with this, they lead the national dialogue, they facilitated national dialogue. Country went through national dialogue and then they made election. The country really undertake very good transition, very successful transition. Tunisia, I mean. So countries like South Africa, after after struggle against the apartheid regime, they undertake a national dialogue and through truth and reconciliation process. They really made successful transition to democracy. So another one is the political crisis. In the instance of political instability, polarization, conflict within a country, countries may convene national dialogue in response to such circumstances.
Thank you very much. When a national dialogue takes place, who are the key participants and what roles should they play before, during, and after the dialogue? Additionally, who tends to benefit the most from this dialogue?
During national dialogue, key participants are number one is the government representatives, officials from executive, legislative, or sometimes judiciary branch. They take part. Political parties, members from various political parties and factions, they take part. Civil society representatives, individuals from non-governmental organizations, advocacy groups or human rights group, they can participate. The other one is ethnic, religious, or cultural groups. They're leaders or representatives from diverse ethnic, religious, or cultural community. They take part. Youth and the women groups, representative advocating for these interests of youth or women, they do take part. Yeah, these are the ones.
Dear our audience, you are watching OBN Horn of Africa Future Africa program. Stay connected. So what role should they play before, during, and after?
The role...
Whatever you do it for less at Harbor Freight.
They engage in preparatory discussions to set agenda, to establish objective, to advocate for their constituency. Like if it's a representative of women, they should advocate for the woman. If it's a political representative of that political group, they should promote their group agenda. In they have some group they represent, right? So they promote that agenda. They build consensus within their respective groups. So they also have a role to go back and convince their group about what. There should be like groups that discuss at the center. The number could be 3,000, 1,000, or whatever the number at the center. Then they go to their region, to their places, to grassroots, and they again lead discussion down. Every person should participate in the discussion. The discussion first will be held at the center. Representative will convene the discussion, and then the discussion go down to the grassroots. So they need to build consensus. During the dialogue, they should engage in discussion, in negotiation, and deliberation aimed at addressing underlying issues. They should offer perspectives, proposals, and recommendations to resolve conflict and grievance. They should forge agreements on key issues through dialogue and compromise. And then they should implement and follow up agreements. Okay, there is some issues agreed on. Okay, they should implement that. And they should advocate for the agreed reforms and the policies, actions. I will do three ways. The first way, before the dialogue, their role before the dialogue, to engage in establishing agenda, objective, ensuring inclusivity and of the participant selection. before the dialogue. They all should also advocate for their constituents' interest and concern to be addressed during the dialogue. They should also build consensus within their respective groups to facilitate unified participation. This is before dialogue. Then during dialogue, they should engage in discussion and the negotiation and deliberation, addressing underlying issues, fostering understanding and finding common ground. This is. They should also offer perspective, proposals, recommendation to resolve conflict and grievance. They should forge agreements or consensus on key issues through dialogue and compromise. This is what should happen during the dialogue. Then after dialogue, they should implement and follow up on agreement reached during the dialogue. They should advocate for the enforcement of agreed upon reforms and actions. They should continue to engage and ensure sustained dialogue and monitor the process, the progress of the implementation. So this is the role they should play.
Who tends to benefit the most from this dialogue?
The nation tends to benefit most. The nation, the country as a whole, the people of the nation. And yeah, everyone benefits. Even the political groups, the government, everybody benefits from the dialogue. The country benefits from the dialogue. It's not easy. If you restore peace, if you have a system that everybody agrees on, at least even the minority group will understand what position the majority supports and why a certain system is working. Okay? Yeah, so everybody benefits.
Great, thank you. Transitional justice is also currently receiving focused attention as a national agenda. How instrumental could it be in fostering peace and stability in Ethiopia? And what are the reasons necessitating its implementation at its crucial junctures?
Transitional justice can play a crucial role in fostering peace, reconciliation, and stability in Ethiopia, especially at this crucial time in the country's history. There are several reasons for this. In the first place, in addressing past human rights violations. Ethiopia has a history of human rights abuses, conflicts, and injustices. In transitional justice mechanism, we work towards addressing these violations by acknowledging past wrongs. It doesn't mean that you bring everybody to justice. You give amnesty to some. Usually it happens like this. There is a body that lead transitional justice, right? So it has different departments. For example, there is a department to which victim of violence would go and report. For example, I was tortured, right? There is a department to which I go and tell my story. I go and tell my story. Mr. X tortured me like this, this day, this year. Okay, this year, this time I was arrested, I was tortured. I will report that, right? That person who I alleged tortured me would be asked by another department. There is a department of offenders, okay? He may get amnesty or he may get charged. Some people would get amnesty. Some people would be sent to court, okay? Some people would go and say, okay, I was tortured. I tortured him because I was ordered by Mr. X, Mr. Y. That was this, that time. I mean, he will explain his side. That is what happens during transitional justice. there can be a lot of cases, thousands of cases will be seen by this commission. So it will help like victims also to feel that, you know, at least recognizing their victimhood, recognizing their problem, their violation is not it's not easy. It's about recognizing victims. It's about giving amnesty. You know, it will provide a truth-telling platform. Those things will be aired in the national TV. Those the story of the victims, and you know, some of, if not all, some of these past wrongs, some of these things will be aired. That is what happened in South Africa. Victims would go and report, tell, like some of them are maybe handicapped, already disabled. Some are maybe people whose fathers or mothers have been killed, or some are family parents whose children are assassinated. They will tell their story. Their story will be aired. That means they are recognized. Their issue is recognized. Okay, so it's a system of therapy for victims of injustice, and also maybe the violators will also get they will be punished, or they get amnesty. So it promotes reconciliation. Transitional justice initiatives such as a Truth Commission or a reparation program. For example, the victims, some will get maybe free education, you know, there is some reparation process for them, okay? As with, depending on the capacity of the country. So, so there is a process of reparations. We address historical conflicts, and we build trust in institution by doing so. Implementing transitional justice measure can contribute to demonstrating a commitment to accountability, to justice, to respect for human rights. This can enhance public confidence in the system, in the system and the government institutions. So it also prevents recurrence of conflict. So officials will know that. So people learn a lot from that. There are a lot of injustices that is not told, that is just hidden, that are hidden from public. So you bring this to public, okay? You take through healing process, because you have a lot of problems. So the victims would go through healing process. So in a way, you promote rule of law. Transitional justice mechanisms reinforce rule of law by holding perpetrators accountable to their actions, regardless of their position or status. So someone may like tell a police commissioner or a minister, order this and has done this injury to him. That will be aired in a national television, and you hear both sides of the story. Maybe you make that person accountable, okay? From starting from grassroots, the police at the lower level to up, maybe a defense force, members of defense, you know, everybody will tell what happened to them. I think in our case, maybe we can have millions of cases, because a lot of abuses, a lot of violations have been committed in the country. So Ethiopia, if Ethiopia focus on transitional justice, that means it's acknowledgement of past injustices and commitment to moving forward to a more inclusive, just, and peaceful society. So it's essential to implement these measures of inclusivity and transparency. It needs commitment, by the way, because we can have a lot of cases of violations and injustices. So a lot of offense has been committed in Ethiopia. Successful transitional justice initiatives can contribute significantly to Ethiopia's path towards lasting peace, stability, and national reconciliation. So it's very important.
Why don't you own commercial real estate? Yes, you. Why don't you own commercial property?
What steps should Ethiopian political entities and citizens take to ensure a peaceful, stable, and prosperous Ethiopia for future generations to inherit?
Ethiopian citizens or political
Entities.
groups, stakeholders should, in the first place, should genuinely want a peaceful Ethiopia, should genuinely engage in national dialogue, should be very genuine. Any competition, we should agree on few things. Number one, we should agree that we need democratic Ethiopia in order to achieve, or in order for Ethiopia to be democratic, we need peace. And we should agree that all our differences should be resolved in political means, in dialogue, in democratic competition, not via violence. We all should agree that non-violence is the way out. We should agree, even though it takes years, we should stick to non-violence. We should stick to peaceful means. We should need a peaceful, democratic, prosperous Ethiopia. Everybody should agree on this. We need peaceful, democratic, and prosperous Ethiopia. These three things are very important. Once we as a goal put these, in order to get peaceful, democratic, and prosperous Ethiopia, what should we do is the question. We are on the right path. National dialogue is one of the things. Now, armed group should negotiate with government, should lay their arms, should get back to this path, armed groups. Now, citizens of Ethiopia should pressure on all groups. We can't benefit from arms. Even though you overthrow government and come to power, you still continue in violence. Another group will fight you. Ethiopia will not achieve peace through arms, through violence. Therefore, we should all agree, as I said, these three things: peaceful, democratic, and prosperous Ethiopia. In order to get this, lay arms, get to negotiation, get to non-violent way, and the people should pressure this, and we should agree on ways of resolving our conflicts, ways of resolving our differences, which is dialogue. So come to national dialogue, air your views, pressure for transitional justice mechanisms, for accountability, okay, for healing process. That is how to save our country. That is how to move forward to see a prosperous, peaceful, and democratic Ethiopia. You can't bring democracy through arms. We have seen a lot of rebel group who took power. Rebel group took power in Eritrea, still in power. Rebel group took power in Rwanda, still in power. They become authoritarian. Rebel group who come to power in Uganda, still in power. EPRDF took power in in arms in 1991. Yeah? It continued to read, it became authoritarian. It lived for 27 to 30. It didn't bring democracy. Democracy should only be achieved through dialogue, through negotiation, through compromise. So that is what we should do.
Have you got any message to convey before we end this session?
My message is we should agree on basic things. The first thing is nobody is even, nobody is extremely good or inherently perfect. Nobody. We should not, in political system, there is no perfect system. Or that is why we always have a change. There is no perfection in politics. Even maybe the most developed country in the world is United States, right? The system in power is not perfect. That is why another people, they tell the defect of this government, come to power. Always we strive for perfection, but we can't be perfect. No perfect system in the world. That is why we always have change. We have to agree on this. So we have to keep on improving. Then we need to agree on very basic things. One, do we need unity? Yes. We need unity of Ethiopia. Okay? In keeping the unity, we need peace. We need democracy. We need equality. And we need prosperity. In order to achieve this, the way is dialogue. My advice for the government of Ethiopia is push for dialogue. Give peace a chance all the time. And they are doing good, like planning a national dialogue. That's very important. And also believe in democracy. Even though it costs you your power, please, that will ensure continuity of our state. That will ensure prosperity, peace, and the democracy. So believe in democracy, respect the right of the people, and the people should also respect the law. Respect the law, ask for your right. Don't violate others' rights. That is what, and be nonviolent, be peaceful. That is what keep our nation united. That is what ensure peace, democracy, equality, and prosperity.
Nagesa Dube, lawyer from CR Washington, thank you for your precious time.
Thank you for having me.
Dear our esteemed audience, we have finished on behalf of today. Thank you for watching.